Okay, George, we're back on Andros here in Tama County. It's that time of year we get a little rain sometimes some heavy rain, sometimes some hard rain.
And sometimes you get some wind with it, and you start looking for things like green snap, and then you also once in a while get some hail with it.
Yeah.
And I think we both looked at fields with hail in not widespread but small areas. So what do you look at when you go to a cornfield that has hail on it?
When we go out to look at a field that's been hailed on, first of all, we want to give it a few days to recover. And then we want to go out and evaluate the stand. As far as population, we want to evaluate the stage of the crop, and we also want to evaluate the amount of defoliation that's occurred. When determining the growth stage of the crop, it's important to remember that by mid-season, several of the lower leaves of the corn plant may have already fallen off. So while we have that plant split, we'll want to evaluate a little closer what the actual growth stage is. Just remember that the first four nodes of the plant are usually at the base of the plant, with the fifth node being right above the first set of brace roots.
A lot of guys will look at the field and think it looks absolutely horrendous, that it's really going to tear down their yield. But you really need to, like you were talking, split the leaves off as well and start looking at how much defoliation there is. What do you do as far as looking at the leaves that are there?
What I typically do, just kind of as a good visual, kind of gives me a point of reference to start from, is I'll strip the leaves off that entire plant and lay them out like on the tailgate.
Yeah.
And then I start counting the amount of leaves that have damage to them. And say if I got 5 leaves that are damaged and there's 15 that are laying on that tailgate, the most I can have damage is the most damage I can have is 33%.
Because it's only the middle 5
It's only the middle 5 that are affected. You know, once I take the top leaves off of what are still wrapped up, those leaves are unaffected. But then again, when I look at those 5 leaves that are damaged, I also get a discount the amount of damage to those leaves, because they're very seldom 100%.
Yeah.
Say if they're, like I said, 5 out of 15 are damaged, only of those 5 they're only half damaged, you're down to 15% of tissue or of defoliation. With that defoliation, is there any other consideration to look at?
Well, I like to look at the stalk itself too, if there's any bruising, especially if you had some heavy wind with it that was kind of blowing those hailstones as well. So you got some bruising, you've got this damage to the leaves. What are you telling guys to look at as far as a fungicide application?
Well, generally a fungicide application isn't a bad deal, depending on the extent of damage in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're only going to protect the yield that is still there. You can't go backwards and get back to 0 damage. But if it's a moderate amount of damage and the cost is justified by the yield potential, a fungicide is a great way to protect that yield potential of that crop. If you've lost 5, 10, 20% of your leaf area, it makes it real important to protect the leaf area that's still there.
That working and producing sugars.
That's still your factory. You need to protect it. So we kind of talked about some of the key points about hail damage on mid-season corn. Is there anything you want to point out on soybeans?
Soybeans, I will look at where the damage is and the bruising on the plant. If it's all above where the cotyledons were, then it's going to grow new plant material. It may bush out more. If there's bruising that's below the regrowth, though, sometimes when we get taller beans, we might have some break over from the weight later in the season.
Yeah. And that's a great point, because even we're still mid-season, we're still putting on vegetative growth. So a lot of times after that initial hail event, it's pretty good to wait several days.
I've always said that if we're going to get hail, I'd like to have enough rain come with it. You can't walk in the field for 72 hours, because you need to have 3 days to be able to look and see how the recovery is.